Man, it seems like every time we turn around, there's more news about unrest in Burkina Faso.
Yeah, it really does.
This time, it's Ibrahim Traoré taking the helm after yet another coup in September 2022.
The second one that year.
Right, the second coup in 2022. So for today's deep dive, we wanted to take a closer look at Traoré.
Yeah.
Who is he? What are his goals? And how is all of this impacting Burkina Faso?
Yeah, he's a pretty fascinating figure, and I think it's really important to understand his story in the context of the broader Sahel region.
Right.
Burkina Faso, unfortunately, has this history of military interventions, and it makes achieving stability very difficult.
Yeah.
And all this is happening against the backdrop of this escalating Islamist insurgency.
Right, of course, yeah. So we have a lot to unpack today, but first, maybe just a quick overview of Traoré himself.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, he's pretty young for a head of state in the region, right?
Born in 1988.
Right, born in 88. So he comes from humble beginnings, born in Kara,
Right.
and really worked his way up. Earned a master's degree in geology.
That's right.
And then went on to graduate from the Georgia's Namoano Military Academy.
Impressive.
Yeah, and even received specialized anti-aircraft training in Morocco.
Oh, wow.
So clearly a bright guy dedicated to the military.
Absolutely. And that dedication really shows in his career trajectory.
Yeah, he joined the army around 2010 and quickly climbed the ranks.
I mean, he was already captain by 2020.
Yeah.
Held several key positions.
Yeah, even served in the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali.
Miduisme, yeah.
Right. And he was actually recognized for his courage during his deployment in Tombouctou in 2018.
That's right.
But even before all of this, there are some interesting links to the earlier coup.
Yeah, exactly. His connection to the Cobra Special Forces Unit is particularly interesting.
The Cobra Special Forces, right?
There's some debate about whether he was actually a member or not,
Yeah.
but they definitely supported his coup.
Right.
And it seems like one of the driving factors was frustration over delayed pay for the soldiers.
Ah, okay. So yeah, support from those elite forces would have been key.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's worth noting that he also supported the January 2022 coup that brought Damiba to power.
Right. The guy he ended up overthrowing.
Yeah. So clearly he's been involved in these power shifts for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about September 2022.
Yeah.
What actually led to this coup?
Well, the official reason given was dissatisfaction with Damiba's handling of the Islamist insurgency.
Oh, so it's the same justification Damiba used to overthrow the previous government?
Pretty much.
Okay, wow. But it's not just empty rhetoric, right? I mean, the situation was really deteriorating.
Absolutely. By September 2022, non-state forces controlled almost 40% of the country.
40%. That's huge.
Yeah, a very dire situation.
Hmm.
And then, of course, there was the ambush on the Djibo supply convoy.
Oh, right.
Just a week before the coup.
11 soldiers killed, 50 civilians kidnapped.
Yeah, it was a devastating blow. And it seems like this event really galvanized the sentiment against Damiba.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how did the coup actually unfold?
Well, it started on September 30th with gunfire and blockades in the capital, Ouagadougou.
Ah, okay.
And later that day, Traoré appeared on national television and announced the takeover.
So he immediately became the leader.
Well, not quite. He was named the president of the MPSR,
The MPSR.
the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration.
The junta, basically.
Exactly. And then a few days later, on October 6th, he was officially declared the interim leader.
So head of state, supreme head of the armed forces, all that,
That's right.
all in a matter of days.
Really highlights the instability and lack of peaceful transitions in the country.
For sure. So what happened after he consolidated his power?
Well, initially, there were suggestions that he would quickly return the country to a democratic path.
Uh-huh.
But that's not quite how things played out.
Hmm.
In May 2024, he extended his mandate for another 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, through a series of national consultations.
Were these consultations widely accepted?
Not really. Most political parties actually boycotted them.
Oh.
So there are definitely questions about the legitimacy of this extension.
Right. And he didn't stop there, right?
Yep. In December 2024, he dissolved his government and removed the prime minister.
Wow. So he's really concentrating power.
Yeah, it seems so. And there are reports of crackdowns on any form of dissent.
Like what?
Well, there are claims that he's using forced conscription to silence critics.
Oh, wow.
And there have been several alleged coup attempts that were supposedly thwarted.
So a pretty tense atmosphere.
Yeah, it's a very uncertain time for Burkina Faso.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little and talk about some of the key policy shifts we've seen under Traore.
All right.
Let's start with security, since that seems to be his top priority.
It definitely is. I mean, one of his first moves was to declare a general mobilization.
A general mobilization, wow.
Yeah, essentially a call to arms for the entire nation. He's also been mobilizing civilian volunteers.
These are the VDPs, right?
Yeah, the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland.
Right. But didn't you mention earlier that there are allegations of forced conscription?
Yeah, that's right. Some reports suggest that people are being pressured or even forced into joining these volunteer units.
That's concerning.
It is. It raises questions about human rights and individual freedoms.
Well, yeah. But besides this mobilization, what else is he doing on the security front?
Well, he's launched some pretty aggressive military offensives against the insurgents.
Okay.
And he's been actively seeking security partnerships with other countries,
Like who?
primarily Russia and Turkey.
Interesting. So that brings us to foreign policy.
Right, and there have been some pretty significant shifts in that arena.
I mean, the biggest one has to be the move away from France, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He expelled French forces from the country shortly after taking power.
Wow.
And at the same time, he's been strengthening ties with Russia.
Reopen the Russian embassy, right?
That's right. And there are even rumors of the Wagner Group operating in the country.
The Wagner Group, those Russian mercenaries. Okay. And what about Turkey?
They've been providing military equipment and training to Burkina Faso.
Interesting.
And then there's also the formation of the Alliance of Sahel States.
The AES,
Yeah, with Mali and Niger.
which are also both led by UNTAS.
Exactly. So you're seeing a realignment of alliances in the region.
Makes sense. And on top of all that, they withdrew from ECOWAS.
Yeah, the Economic Community of West African States.
So they're really charting their own course.
It seems that way. All right, so let's move on to the economy.
Okay.
And here we've seen this really strong emphasis on resource nationalism.
Oh.
Basically the idea of controlling and benefiting from their own natural resources.
And what does that look like in practice?
Well, for starters, he's nationalized 2 gold mines.
2 gold mines. Wow.
Yeah, pretty significant. He's also halted the export of unrefined gold to Europe.
So no more shipping out raw materials.
Exactly. And to process the gold domestically, he's inaugurated a national gold refinery.
Okay, so they're trying to move up the value chain.
Exactly. They've also suspended small-scale gold export permits.
Really consolidating control over the gold industry.
Absolutely. And perhaps even more strikingly, he's rejected financial assistance from the IMF and the World Bank.
Wow. That's a bold move.
It is. He's really pushing for economic self-sufficiency.
So where are they getting the funding for all these initiatives?
Well, they've been prioritizing agricultural investment.
Focusing on food self-sufficiency.
Exactly. And there are reports that they've managed to clear some of their external debt,
Interesting.
which would free up more resources for domestic spending. They've also established a national support center for artisanal cotton processing.
Oh.
And they've even started construction on a new airport, the Ouagadougou-Donson Airport.
Some pretty ambitious projects in the works.
Yeah, they're really trying to shake things up.
It's clear that Traoré has a very specific vision for Burkina Faso.
Yeah, and it comes through very clearly in his rhetoric.
So what are some of the key themes that he emphasizes?
Well, security is obviously paramount.
No negotiation with insurgents until they're weakened.
That's right. He's taking a very hard-line stance, and this ties in with his strong emphasis on self-reliance.
Rejecting European and American aid.
Exactly. He sees those as forms of dependency.
And there's also that strong anti-imperialist sentiment.
Yeah, a lot of his rhetoric harkens back to Thomas Sankara,
Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader from the 80s.
who was also assassinated in a coup.
Right, of course. And Traoré has also expressed skepticism about Western-style democracy.
He often cites China and Singapore as models.
Okay. And he's not afraid to use strong language.
He's issued warnings about stateless persons and enemies of the nation.
Wow, okay. But it's not all just tough talk, right?
Not at all. He's also emphasized the need for infrastructure development.
Roads, bridges, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and he's been very clear that he wants to form win-win partnerships with other countries.
So not just aid, but mutually beneficial collaboration.
Exactly. And there's this really interesting anecdote that illustrates this pragmatism.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
So apparently, when Saudi Arabia offered to build mosques in Burkina Faso, Traoré politely declined.
He declined.
Yeah, and instead he asked them to invest in infrastructure projects.
That's pretty fascinating. Shows where his priorities lie.
Absolutely.
So, with all these changes happening, how has the international community reacted to Traore?
Well, it's been a mixed bag.
You mean not everyone's thrilled?
Yeah, unsurprisingly.
Well, yeah, after two coups in a year.
Right. So ECOWAS and the African Union have both condemned the coups and suspended Burkina Faso's membership.
Okay, that makes sense.
France has also been very critical of the situation.
Especially after being expelled from the country.
Yeah, relations are definitely strained.
And what about Russia?
Well, they've expressed support for Traore.
Unsurprisingly, given their growing influence in the region.
Right. And the U.S. has expressed concerns about democratic backsliding and human rights.
Yeah, I bet they're not too happy about the coziness with Russia either.
Probably not. The EU has also suspended its training missions in Burkina Faso.
Okay. And what about the financial institutions?
The World Bank has expressed caution about the nationalization of the gold mines,
Okay.
and the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the MCC, has terminated its compact with Burkina Faso.
Wow. And what about the IMF?
They've also expressed caution, and their aid offer was rejected.
Okay. So a lot of Western institutions are wary.
Yeah, definitely. But it's not all negative.
Oh.
Interestingly, there's been some vocal support for Traore from youth groups in Ghana.
Interesting. So his message is resonating with some segments of the population in neighboring countries.
Yeah, it seems so. Of course, it's important to acknowledge the concerns raised by human rights organizations.
Yeah.
They've documented civilian casualties in the military offensives,
Okay.
and they're also very worried about the suppression of dissent.
So it's a very complex picture.
Yeah, no easy answers here.
So to wrap things up, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think the first thing is that Traore's rise to power is inextricably linked to the ongoing instability in Burkina Faso.
Yeah, two coups in 1 year.
Right. And his leadership is characterized by a really strong focus on security and national sovereignty.
No compromise on those issues.
Exactly.
Okay.
We've also seen these really significant shifts in foreign policy.
Away from France towards Russia and Turkey.
Yeah. And a new emphasis on regional alliances.
Look at the AES.
Right. And then, of course, there's the major shift in economic direction.
Resource nationalism, self-sufficiency, rejecting Western aid.
All very bold moves. And finally, I think the international reaction really highlights the complex geopolitical landscape.
Condemnation from some, support from others.
Yeah, and a lot of caution.
It definitely raises some big questions.
It does. I mean, given everything we've discussed today, what are the realistic prospects for Burkina Faso?
Yeah.
Can they achieve lasting stability and genuine sovereignty while facing this internal conflict and navigating these shifting global alliances?
It's a tough road ahead.
It really is. And it makes you think about the immense challenges that post-colonial nations face,
Yeah.
trying to balance their security needs with external influences. And in a way, Traore's leadership embodies many of these tensions.
It's a fascinating case study.
It is. But of course, this has just been a snapshot.
Yeah, quick overview.
There's so much more to explore. I mean, how are these policies actually impacting people on the ground?
Right.
And how will the security situation in the Sahel continue to evolve?
Definitely a lot to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.